bring in a member of Congress who has been a champion of Trump's deportation efforts, and she's actually going to El Salvador, which is surprising to me. Republican Representative Paulina Luna, Florida. Good to see you, Luna.
Hey, Chris, what's going on?
It sounds a little democratish. We will pay you to self-deport. Are you concerned that this could go wrong, or do you think that this is a good tool in the box?
Look, I don't necessarily know that people that are here illegally are going to take Kristi Noem up on that, or the president. Frankly, I hope that they would leave on their own accord and not have to be paid on the way out. But I think long term, what they're thinking and calculating numbers is that it's likely cheaper than having to house them, put them in beds, then pay for flights and deport that way. And so hoping that people will do the right thing. But again, this kind of ties into why I'm going to South America, going to El Salvador. As you know, Chris, I am the chairwoman of the El Salvador caucus. Actually, that was one of Representative Gates' last things that he did in Congress, was to name me chairwoman. And frankly, El Salvador has been leading South America in regards to its anti-crime stability efforts. And as you know, many people that come here illegally are coming from South America. So if we are going to actually go to the root of the issue, I think that we need to start talks in helping South American countries stabilize their economies, and that is tied to crime. And so if we can really replicate what Bukele has done in El Salvador and help foster that relationship, I think in the long run, it'll do wonders for this country and for, frankly, South America.
All right, so two separate issues to speak to. One is, how does that jive with America First, giving money to El Salvador or any of these other broken down places? I thought that MAGA was about keeping money here, not giving it to folks who can't get it together themselves.
Well, Bukele's gotten it together, and he frankly went from being one of the most dangerous countries in the world to now one of the safest. And I would actually argue, Chris, to that point, in that we are simply assisting in their efforts to take back their own people, and then also working to help stabilize. Not to mention, the White House is actively engaged in negotiating tariffs with El Salvador. And I will also have you know, because you did address it on a previous section, I actually just got back from meeting with members of the European Union, Romania, Moldova, and frankly, those tariff negotiations and talks are in works, and there's over 50 countries, I think upwards now of 100, that are actually in talks with our White House in an effort to have an open, healthy trade with the U.S.
Yeah, I think they would have done it if you just picked up the phone. I think that the president did it in reverse order, but it doesn't matter. We'll see what deals he gets, and then the criticism goes away, and he'll live or die on the strength of the deals, and that's fine. In terms of replicating, you said we want to replicate what they're doing in El Salvador. You'd have a hard time passing our constitutional standards, given what Bukele has done down there. Just a cursory review. He rounded up almost 100,000 people with almost no due process. El Salvador is not America.
Well,
fair point?
Well, I will say that what Bukele was facing was a country that was overtaken and run by dangerous cartels. We're not just talking about the cartels here in the United States that I would argue are evil, yes, but down there, the level and magnitude of which they went through in some of these gang initiations. I was actually just talking to some people now that are going on the delegation with us. I'm talking about, you know, having to kill your own children, your wife, your family members, and then 60-plus people to be initiated into these violent cartels. Their only way for him to actually bring peace to that nation and make it become prosperous again was to do what he did. And frankly, the people that they did put in prison, I don't know if you know the story, which I'm sure you do, Chris, but for viewers who might not, what they did is they actually had people that would hang out in the tattoo parlors. And when the gang members would actually come in to get their tattoos covered up to make it look like they were no longer part of those gangs because they heard about the arrests that were coming, they actually would send them immediately to prison. Now, they have work camps. They are releasing some people, but for those very violent offenders that were murderers and in some cases actually creating and committing human sacrifice, which is just a wild concept and completely not fathomable, those people, I would argue, deserve the death penalty. But my stance and President Bukele's stance on that are separate. He believes that jail and life in prison is a lot harsher than death, and I would argue the opposite. But that's here nor there. I think fostering our relationship with South America and then also letting other countries know as well that what they did would be the way towards a free South America. I do believe that, and so that's why we're going down there. And mind you, this is not just a Republican trip. We're actually going with the co-chair, who's a Democrat, and frankly, it's going to be obviously something that Democrats will have to explain because they said that this has been partisan politics, and it hasn't, at least not from our perspective.
Thank you for watching. Subscribe below and download our NewsNation app right now on your phone, and you will get fact-based, unbiased news for all Americans.